During World War II, members of the Women's Air Force service pilots were the first women to become official military pilots. Their leadership helped advance the U.S. war effort by conducting domestic flights of military aircraft between U.S. air bases, so the aircraft could then be transported overseas. Due to their efforts, women were able to break the stereotypes of a male-dominated industry and inspired many young women to become pilots and support their country. In 1939, skilled aviator Jacqueline Cochran reached out to First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt about the usage of female pilots in the military. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt responded with, "We are in war and we need to fight it with all our ability and every weapon possible. Women pilots in this particular case are a weapon to be used." This allowed women to attend aviation training programs in college at the 1 woman to every 10 men rate, but the Army Air Force wasn't ready to fully let women take over the cockpit. At the same time, Nancy Harkness Love, another skilled aviator, produced a similar idea to the ferrying division. She stated in her letter to the Army Air Force, "I've been able to find 49 women pilots I can rate as excellent material, and there are probably at least 15 more that are up to handling pretty complicated stuff." This idea was to allow experienced female pilots to fly non-combat missions for the Air Force, but it was soon rejected by the Army Air Force. But soon a situation would put not only our country, but the entire military on edge. Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, left the United States in a state of devastation. It immediately pushed the U.S. into being a part of World War II. Men in all branches of the military were sent overseas for combat duty, leaving the Air Force with a shortage of pilots. To help with the war effort and decrease the number of pilots needed, the Army Air Force began a program named the WASPs, or Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron, based off of Nancy Harkness Love's plan. That same year, 1942, Commanding General of the Army Air Force, Henry Hap Arnold, added another program for less experienced females to train in aviation and perform domestic flights. It was called the Women's Flying Training Detachment, otherwise known as the WFTD. This program was commanded by Jacqueline Cochran and was stationed out of Houston, Texas, but was later relocated to Avenger Field in Sweetwater, Texas.
Well, we were at war. America had been attacked, and everybody wanted to get in the war, and everybody who could was volunteering to do whatever it was they could do best. And the women that went in the WASP all had to have a private pilot's license before they could qualify to take Air Force training. So we were all volunteers. Of course, men were being drafted, but the women pilots were volunteers. And I just wanted to do my part. Everybody wanted to be in. We were all on the same side, and we were all pulling together.
30,000 patriotic women applied for aviation training between the two programs. The women, of course, had to have a certain number of flying hours, and in that case, only 1,830 were accepted, and immediately began training the Army way. In August 1943, the Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron and the Women's Flying Training Detachment integrated into a bigger program, the WASP. The program, just like the WASPs and the WFTD, was not covered by military insurance, meaning the WASP weren't officially a part of the military. They would not have death or injury benefits and paid uniforms, but the women made it work. The women bought their own uniforms and paid for their lodgings with the $150 they earned every month by training. The training the WASP endured was the same experience the men had. Training included 6 months of ground school and flight training before eligible for graduation. Ground school was held in a classroom, and that's where the women learned to map locations, identify landmarks, and weather patterns. The women even had to exceed performance in a flight simulator before sitting in an actual cockpit. If the women did not reach the standards of the Army Air Force, they were washed out, just like the male trainees. Flight training was learning to fly the military way, which was cross-country flying. Cross-country flying was a hazardous job, with the long distances, night flying, inclement weather, and landings. They often caused deaths among the group. One WASP was severed in two when her plane was coming in for a landing when it collided with another aircraft. After proving their proficiency in the cockpit, the WASP was ready for graduation. During graduation, the WASP would receive their special silver wings for the hard work and dedication they put into their training. These women had achieved their dream and now would be going on to something even greater. After they graduated, the WASP would be stationed at any of the 120 different air bases across the country. They ferried military aircraft to the point of embarkation, towed targets for anti-artillery practice, and served as flight instructors for both male and female pilots. The WASP worked these jobs in order to release additional men for combat duty overseas. In December 1944, General Hap Arnold spoke to the last class of WASP at their graduation. He said, "You and more than 900 of your sisters have shown that you can fly wingtip to wingtip with your brothers. If ever there was a doubt in anyone's mind that women can become skillful pilots, the WASP have dispelled that." By the end of the program, 1,074 WASP have graduated, 38 had died, and over 60 million miles were flown. They even had their own mascot, Fifanilla, who was created by Walt Disney. 2 weeks later, the WASP program was disbanded. General Hap Arnold intended to get military status for the WASP, but it would have needed an act of Congress, and that would have taken time. When World War II ended, the public seemed to forget about the WASP. The only ones who did not forget were the ones who had served. Many of the WASP continued to fly even after the war. Others just simply moved on to other careers. In the 1970s, the first 3 women were able to graduate from the United States Air Force Academy. Their inspiration, the Women's Air Force Service Pilots. Those 3 women called for the WASP to gain their veteran status and be given the same rights as male veterans. The WASP did gain that status, and they gained even more. In 2010, President Obama awarded the WASP the Congressional Gold Medal. Over 250 WASP made the trip to Washington, D.C. to receive their honor. The WASP showed leadership by having determination and skill. They opened up many new opportunities for women and gained more independence as well. They were always leaders for women because they too were working a man's job. They dispelled stereotypes and inspired many new generations in aviation. Astronaut Eileen Collins stated, "I wanted to set a good precedent for other women, just as the WASP have done." She then went on to be the first female pilot of a space shuttle, never forgetting her first real inspiration. The WASP served their country out of courage and patriotism because they knew their time flying high was limited. These ladies had a purpose, and that purpose was to live their dream and sacrifice for their country in a time of need. Former WASP B.J. Williams said, "If you have a dream of something you want to do, and you prepare yourself and stay focused, go for it." The WASP have proven that women could fly and be very successful at whatever they do. The Women's Air Force Service Pilots accomplished many things, from being the first women to fly military aircraft such as B-26s, B-29s, and T-6 Texans, to flying high and forever changing the roles in aviation. The WASP undeniably impacted the workforce, and today their hard work can be seen on many Air Force bases across the country. Their legacy is truthfully unique and deserves to live on forever. The WASP have completed their mission. Their job has been successful, but as is usual in war, the cost has been heavy. 38 WASP have died while helping their country move toward the moment of final victory. The Air Forces will long remember their service and their final sacrifice.
All the jobs were open to the men, and very few of them were open to women. We were supposed to stay in the kitchen and take care of the kids. There's no such thing anymore as a man's job. I think women have invaded all the different everything there is to do.